Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping right into a super high-stakes, rapidly developing situation that literally has an entire subcontinent holding its breath. It's June 3rd, 2026, and if you've looked at the news cycle at all today, you know it's absolutely dominated by one looming event: India's upcoming southwest monsoon. Now, we're not just talking about a rainy couple of weeks here. We're talking about the absolute lifeblood of one of the world's largest economies. A major disruption right now, well, that has the potential to seriously rattle global commodity markets and trigger worldwide inflationary pressures. The forecasts are flashing some pretty intense warning signs, and honestly, the stakes for global food production and macroeconomic stability have rarely been higher. Okay, let's dive into this. Why exactly is the 2026 monsoon grabbing massive national headlines right at the start of the season? I mean, we're looking at a forecast that's instantly captured the full attention of government agencies, economic forecasters, and global traders all at once. Suddenly, the entire nation is fixated on the skies. So what's the deal? Well, meteorologists have spotted a major anomaly on the horizon, one that threatens to completely upend the incredibly delicate balance of the rainy season.
The catalyst for all this anxiety really boils down to the first domino in our chain reaction, the El Niño warning. And look, this isn't just some mild suspicion or a vague weather model. This is a formal alert that has meteorologists and ag experts totally on edge. The World Meteorological Organization, the WMO, has officially warned of a high probability of an El Niño event developing. Historically speaking, an El Niño year often correlates with a major significant drop in India's seasonal rainfall, sometimes even triggering severe droughts. So when a heavy-hitting organization like the WMO issues a warning of this magnitude exactly as the rainy season begins, it fundamentally shifts the macroeconomic outlook for the entire year.
Now, the timing here is absolutely crucial. That's what makes this so incredibly dangerous. The official rainy season kicks off right now, in June 2026. Simultaneously, the WMO's highest probability danger window for El Niño to actually develop spans right from June through August. Think about that. That is a direct 100% overlap with the absolute most critical months for the Indian summer monsoon. So we aren't talking about some distant off-season threat. This anomaly is forecasted to develop exactly when the country needs its normal rainfall the most.
To really grasp what this warning means for the country, we need to look at exactly how El Niño behaves in this context. According to weather experts, El Niño basically acts as a massive disruptor. It's a meteorological event known specifically for causing serious climatic volatility and huge deviations from historical precipitation baselines across India. So instead of those predictable, steady rains that the whole region relies on, El Niño introduces erratic, suppressed rainfall. And as you'll see in just a second, this disruption to the precipitation baseline is really just the spark for a much larger, systemic chain reaction.
Let's zoom out from the macro weather patterns up in the sky and bring this down to the literal ground level. You know, it's pretty easy to just look at a weather forecast in isolation, but to understand why this is dominating national headlines, we have to look at India's deep, structural water dependency. Think of the monsoon like a central bank injecting vital liquidity into an economy. Only in this case, the rains are the singular mechanism for refilling the country's entire physical water supply. It's a massive nationwide deposit directly into the agricultural system.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it visualizes this cascading hydro-agricultural system. Like I said, the monsoon acts as the sole annual deposit into India's water bank. First, the rains arrive and fill up the vital surface reservoirs. Then, that surface water slowly percolates down into the earth to recharge deep groundwater. It's a brilliant, natural system, but man, it has a glaring vulnerability. If the sky defaults on that initial deposit, the entire subterranean system just runs dry. We start seeing massive groundwater recharge deficits, and the surface reservoirs are left sitting half empty. Literally, the monsoon is the only deposit this national water bank gets all year long.
And that naturally brings us to the human element. We've traced the weather down to the water, but now we really need to trace that water to the people, because the impact on Indian agriculture is the real beating heart of this explainer. This is the core industry that absolutely relies on those reservoirs and that deep groundwater. When we talk about an El Niño disruption, we aren't just throwing around abstract hydrological failures or talking about dry dirt. We're talking about the daily survival and the economic foundation of real, everyday families.
To really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of the situation, we have to look at the numbers. Millions. That is the number of farmers whose exact livelihoods depend heavily on this monsoon rainfall. To put that into perspective, we're talking about an agricultural workforce that is literally larger than the entire population of many nations. Millions of families are waking up right now looking at the exact same WMO forecast we just discussed and wondering if their crops and their incomes are actually going to survive the summer.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly why agriculture is so uniquely exposed here. Agriculture in this region basically operates without a safety net. From the initial rainfall to the surface reservoirs, all the way down to the seasonal groundwater levels, every single link in the nation's food production chain is entirely exposed to this one weather variable. The industry leans so heavily on this cascading system, and there isn't some massive, secondary backup mechanism waiting in the wings. If the water bank doesn't get replenished by the monsoon, every one of these agricultural dependencies is threatened at the exact same time, which leads to immediate, severe volatility in crop yields.
Let's zoom out one final time to the macroeconomic climax. Because, as we all know, a threat to the farm doesn't just stay on the farm. It rapidly becomes a threat to the entire nation and, honestly, beyond. It's the classic ripple effect. That WMO weather warning from June translates directly into a massive, unavoidable supply-side shock. And that shock is eventually going to wash over the entire country, driving up inflationary pressures across the board.
The dominoes here fall quickly, and they fall brutally. Weaker monsoons instantly slash rural yields, which totally devastates the incomes of those millions of farmers we talked about. That localized rural pain immediately triggers nationwide food shortages. And what happens next? Consumer inflation skyrockets at the grocery store. It's wild to think about, but a meteorological anomaly out in the Pacific Ocean suddenly means an urban family is paying significantly more for their basic staples, while the rural farmer is struggling just to make ends meet. It's a perfectly synchronized economic disruption.
So the crucial point is that we are ultimately looking at a compounding three-pronged vulnerability. First, you have the farmers who are facing severe income loss and potential financial ruin. Second, you've got everyday consumers across the country facing inevitable food price spikes and rapid inflation. And third, there's the broader Indian economy itself, which relies so heavily on agricultural output, bracing for a massive structural hit. It's a tightly interconnected web, and it makes it incredibly easy to see exactly why this impending supply shock is the defining macroeconomic story of the season.
In fact, as our source material explicitly points out, this story is currently among the most discussed national issues. The state of affairs right now is incredibly tense. Government agencies aren't just sitting back and watching. They, along with the top weather experts, are locked into a high-alert monitoring phase. They're tracking every single data point. Rushing to provide timely forecasts so the nation can at least try to adapt. But the harsh reality is, you can only adapt so much to a missing monsoon.
Which leaves us with a truly vital consideration. We've looked at the data, we've tracked the timeline, and we completely understand the massive, million-strong domino effect that's just waiting to be triggered. So I leave you with this. As the rainy season officially begins, how prepared is the national economy for a massive disruption from the sky? We'll definitely be watching the clouds. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.